probably heard people say that they don't have the balance to do strength and skill, such as a handstand, or that they don't have the balance to do a pistol squat or a single leg squat. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that balance is a myth, or at least it doesn't function in this mysterious, mythological way that most people think that it does. In fact, people are probably confusing the idea of balance with what it really is, and that is integrated strength. And we're going to go through a sequence of moves that'll show you how to unlock greater quote-unquote balance, i.e. integrated strength, which will help you in a number of ways, not only from injury prevention and recovery, all the way through to building advanced strength and skill that you see me and all of our students doing, and being able to sustain athletic longevity and incorporate all of this into all of the adventures of life that you want to be able to do. So we're going to go through a sequence of moves, and this is based on a couple of questions that I've gotten in the past couple of weeks in terms of people asking about balance for specifically handstands, but also dealing with things like vertigo and balance issues and nausea and dizziness. And so a number of symptoms of a larger picture of what it means to be truly capable in terms of your human strength and skill. And so I want to mix this discussion with some movements. And so we're going to start by jumping out and then putting hands on the ground, and then going into one of the most basic positions for upper body strength, and that's the frog stand. Now, as we start to go through some of these moves and you start to see what it is I'm talking about, we're gonna touch on a couple of different principles, okay? So the first thing is this idea of integrated strength. Now, this concept is tying together what people commonly think of that balance is some sort of thing inside the brain that they don't quite know how it works. Well, usually this is they're probably thinking about the neurological system and then how this integrates with the vestibular system. And then from there, the fine-tuned strength of all of the large muscle groups that have to come into play, for example, in something like a press handstand. Okay, there's large muscle groups that are firing, but then there's also the dexterity of the small, fine muscle movement. And so all of this comes together. And so it's not necessarily a lack of quote unquote balance, or this mysterious idea that people can't really define, like we're just masters of balancing ourselves like you would balance rocks on top of one another. In fact, I will use this analogy. It's actually very similar to when you've probably heard people say this before, oh, they're so they have such great balance. Similar to how people say, oh, they have talent. They're so talented. For some people, that might even be a little offensive, because with the underlying, the base of that iceberg, okay, underneath what people see as talent is this massive amount of work that underlies all of that as the foundation. And that's what we're actually looking at here with this foundation. So after we hit our horse stance and we're coming down to the frog position and we're balanced here, and then we press back, and then a strong push up. Okay, a couple of more moves going through this sequence that I'm talking about today. Okay, the idea of talent is actually just a form of currency. It was a form of monetary value, a piece of monetary value, like a dollar bill, a talent, a gold talent. And so that stood for something. It stood for currency. And the more currency a person has, the more currency they have going out. It's a current, okay? And the same thing works for balance. There's this whole underlying amount of strength that allows a person to actually have balance. So whether you're a pro athlete or a person that is trying to not become fragile in their old age. It's all about balance in terms of building that foundation of strength where you can move with freedom through life. And so after that position where we do this push-up, we'll be in this position here, and we're going to shift to one hand and turn over and come back around, and then popping up to our feet with balance. Really, it's powerful strength. Imagine this. When a person is just learning how to skateboard, or they're learning how to snowboard, and they're trying to stay up and they're trying to maneuver, and after a while, if you've ever done this before, you've gone ice skating, you know what I'm talking about. The outsides of the legs are going to be so sore. The soleus muscle coming down, wrapping into the ankle, they're so sore from balancing, from shifting in snowboarding from heels to toes and making those carving motions and staying in there. And it's not until a person has conditioned those muscles that they are able to fire quickly and maintain that level of relaxed balance that allows you to maneuver freely and then have fun rather than just being stationary and rigid in that spot. And so that's another aspect of balance that ties in to the foundation of strength. So one must have a foundational level of strength that you're standing upon for then to start to even be able to experience the relaxation that's necessary for the muscles to fire quickly and with precision and in the right order. If you've ever seen a person fall, sometimes they'll flail, their arms and their legs are going all over the place. And for another person, they might know how to fall, and all of a sudden their muscles just work spontaneously and subconsciously, and their arms come in and they turn into a little shell and they know how to roll out. And so that comes from a foundation of strength, fine-tuned, so that in a moment of a stressful situation, a person can actually be in a relaxed state, and then all of that strength that they have is able to be utilized so that you're safe on the one end or advancing to higher levels of strength and skill on the other. Okay, so after that convo, boom, we're pushing up here, stepping back, and then we're coming up to this position of balance. So this is what we call a crane stance. And for this position to work, you're gonna see that my foot down here is twitching and it's working all over the place. This is an element of balance. And right now the muscles are working, they're warming up to the point where I can just stand perfectly balanced on one leg. With my knee higher than my hip is where we want it to be, activating the hip flexors. And again, it's not just a mystical element of balance, but it's based on that foundation of strength. And then from there, we're sliding down with balance and control into a snake stance. This snake stance is one that can be very difficult for people because they don't have the mobility and the flexibility to be able to get into this position with the heels flat and the legs straight and the hip down lower than the knee. And so that spotlights again the necessity for that aspect of relaxation as well. And so there's all of these different components that are coming together. On the one side, we need to have that strength, but it rests in this kind of yin and yang situation with relaxation. I always tell people that you have to be relaxed, but alert, calm, but powerful. It's like how Bruce Lee talked about being water, and whenever he described a punch, it was being very loose until the point of impact on the fist that everything then tenses and then it relaxes again. And so this also wraps into this whole concept of balance, which is going to be preservative for you in the long run over the course of your life and for athletic longevity, all the way up to being able to understand how to unlock advanced strength and skill at all, whether that's a backflip or a handstand or anything else. So after that stance, we put the hands down and we sweep with precision and balance, and then we shift. And then after that shift, we roll. And so let me go through this sequence so that you can see the interplay of strength and speed and power and directional change and that relaxation, but then that snap, all coming together for balance. And not only that, but movement in balance. So not just static balance, but dynamic balance. And not in some sort of mystical, non-understandable way that is only reserved for a few people that naturally were talented enough to be born with balance, but it's something that anybody can build. And so let's go through this. And so that was just foundation, basic movements. We start people with an assessment going through their pushing strength, their pulling strength, which applies to the different elements of Powerbatics. So pushing strength is measured by handstands, on demand at all angles. Pulling strength is on the bar with the ninja strength. Then there's power moves, where this starts to go into circular dynamic power with flares and spinning handstands. And then circ with everything up in the aerial apparatus. And then free run with all of your rolls, vaults, flips, and more. And so we start with an assessment where we run people through that. And then whenever they get into training, they're learning the whole warm up. And then they go straight into this foundation sequence. And these pieces from this foundational kata, as we call it, all copy and paste into much higher levels of strength and skill. So it could be like that handstand that I showed at the beginning, or a spinning handstand, or even a backflip. See you in the next video and in training soon.